Mr. President, it's Thursday afternoon, and that means it's certainly one of my favorite times in the U.S. Senate because it's when I get to come down to the Senate floor and recognize an Alaskan who has done something that's great for our state, great for the community, great for the country, you name it. I come down here and brag about somebody who I represent in Alaska, and I call this person the Alaskan of the Week. I know the presiding officer likes it, and the pages certainly do. And what I like to always do when I'm starting this speech each week is talk to our visitors in the gallery, people who are watching on TV, to give a little update on what's going on in Alaska and encourage a visit. You will have the visit of a lifetime, guaranteed, if you come to Alaska. So right now, as you can imagine, in the Great White North, winter is coming in parts of the state. It's definitely arrived in other parts. But winter is a great time to be in Alaska, not just the summer. You can ski, snowboard, at the end of the day, sit back, drink something warm, watch the northern lights dance in our skies. So come on and visit. Summer, winter, fall, spring, it's a trip of a lifetime. You will love coming to Alaska. And it's really nice to do it if you're coming to visit now. To be wearing a fur in Alaska. We have some great furriers in Alaska, but David Green, Master Furrier in Anchorage, is one of the oldest, most well-respected, and certainly one of the best in our state, I think in the country. It's an Alaskan institution, and our Alaskan of the Week, Mr. Perry Green, one of the kindest, most generous, most patriotic, hard-working Alaskans, has worked throughout the decades to keep this great institution that way. So, Mr. President, let me tell you a bit about Perry Green. His father, David, was from New York, was enthralled with Alaska, a huge fan of the characters that Alaska attracts, as well as Jack London's Call of the Wild. So David moved to Washington State to be close to Alaska, where he eventually opened stores many, many years ago. Perry Green, David's son, was born in Seattle on March 17th, 1936. That's St. Patrick's Day. How great is that? I always knew Perry had a little Irish in him. He recalled, "My father would come back from Alaska with such great stories, and all the Alaskan sourdoughs would come to visit my dad. They sat at the dinner table, and I was enthralled with their tales," Perry said. And anyone who knows anything about Alaska knows those stories, has heard about them, read about them. Bear attacks, moose charges, frostbite, crossing perilous rivers, traversing vast landscapes under the dancing skies, wolves howling in the distance, fires barely starting at 40 below, and countless stories about being saved by the kindness of strangers out on the trail. Perry also came of age during World War II. His father made fur ruffs for the soldiers' parkas, which set the stage for Perry's enduring patriotism and support for our troops. He said, quote, "I remember watching the troops head overseas during this time of war, the wonderful parades. It all made me swell up with pride." Mr. President, I would say Perry Green is the most patriotic American I know. And we have a lot of patriots in Alaska. He met his beautiful future wife, the beautiful Gloria, gracious Gloria, when they were both young and began dating as teenagers, and they've been together ever since. As a matter of fact, that's 63 years of marriage. That is something to be celebrated. Perry said, quote, "Marrying Gloria was the best decision I ever made." Mr. President, I know Gloria, and I would certainly agree with Perry, and I would certainly agree with this. Like me, he definitely married up. And like his father, as a young man, Perry traveled back and forth from Washington State to Alaska, often for work. He went up to Alaska to work on the Alaska Railroad in order to save enough money to buy Gloria a wedding ring. He then served in the U.S. Army for over 3 years, and eventually he and Gloria made their way to our great state to forge a life together. They've been there ever since, and what a life they have had and lived. Initially, Perry worked at his father's store in downtown Anchorage, but for a time he broke out on his own and started the Anchorage Fur Trading Company, which became the largest fur dealer in Alaska. And it was wildly successful. He traveled all across the state, 300 villages in all, some of them multiple times, buying furs from locals. He traveled by dog team, by sled, by snow machine, by bush plane. And everywhere he went, he was greeted so warmly and so generously by the people in rural Alaska in these villages. He said, "I learned so much from the Alaska Native people, and I was in awe of their kindness, their respect for elders, and their rich, deep cultural heritage." That time in rural Alaska was one of the best times of his life, and it laid the foundation for what has been one of Perry Green's biggest loves, our state, the great state of Alaska, which he has given his all to. His company, David Green Master Furrier, is an iconic business in downtown Anchorage because they sell some of the best and most beautiful furs around, no doubt, but also because of Perry and his extended family who have done such a great job running the company for decades. Mr. President, my daughters and I, we have a little tradition on Christmas Eve. We head over to this great store and look for something to buy my wife, their mom. It's a fun tradition that we do. Perry has been the face of the store for decades. People still remember his quirky commercials featuring tarantulas, huge athletes chasing him around, and always the tagline, "If you don't know your furs, know your furrier." Well, it seems like all of Anchorage and so much of Alaska knew their furrier. It should be noted that they also know this Alaska Furrier in Las Vegas as well. Mr. President, Perry Green is a very good poker player and has won 3 World Series of poker bracelets and has made it to the final table of the World Series of Poker main event in Vegas 2 times. How about that for an adventurous life? But it wasn't just his store and Perry's love of a good poker game that has endeared him to so many Alaskans. A man of deep faith, he is one of the most generous people in my state and one of the most committed Alaskans to public service and helping others. "I was never interested in being rich," Perry said. "I wanted to do something positive for other people because that's the greatest thing you can do." He has sat on nearly every board there is, you name it, the Taxi Cab Commission, the Insurance Board, the Planning and Zoning Board, the Symphony and Opera Board, the Rotary Board, members of the Elks Club, the Masons, the Alaska Jewish Campus and Museum. The list goes on and on and on in terms of his service. He also raises money for numerous causes. I can't think of a fundraising effort that his name is not part of. His longtime friend, Gordon Glazer, said about Perry, "Perry is especially generous in causes that raise money for our men and women in uniform, and on the eve of Veterans Day, we can't thank him enough for that." Anyone who's been in Anchorage for the last 2 generations knows that if you need something done, Perry Green will do it. That's what his friend Gordon said. And if you're down on your luck, or if you need a job, a place to stay, you need some assistance, Perry will help. Every community, every state has leaders like that. We all know those type of people. They're very, very special, and he's one of them. Perry and his wife Gloria are also so personally generous with their house, a lively, happy place open to people all across our state and really the world. Anchorage Mayor Ethan Berkowitz, another longtime friend of Perry's, credits him for teaching him and so many others, quote, "how to be an Alaskan." What does that mean? According to Mayor Berkowitz, it means that he brought the spirit of Tikkun Olam to Alaska. That is a Hebrew phrase that means healing the world. Perry has brought this to our state, one generous act at a time, one community at a time. Mr. President, Perry and Gloria will be honored at Alaska's Jewish Gala next week, one of our state's most fun, memorable events. It'll be next Saturday evening, and I will be there for sure. It's a time when we all can gather together, celebrate the vital role the Jewish community has played in our great state, and be reminded that Alaska is a place where we can all come together and all take care of each other the way the Greens have been doing for decades. Rabbi Yosef Greenberg, a good friend of mine and another extremely generous man who has given so much to our state, says that the mission of the Alaska Jewish campus that Perry Green has been so generous to is, quote, warming up Alaska. In the 60 years of Alaska's statehood, said Rabbi Greenberg, Perry Green has warmed up Alaska, not only with his David Green fur coats, but even more so with the joys of his life, big heart, and lending a hand to ordinary Alaskans and to anyone in need. That's how he's warmed up our great state. Mr. President, Perry and Gloria have done so much for Alaska. They are highly deserving of this recognition that they will be receiving at the Jewish Gala next week. Congratulations to them and their 5 children, 13 grandchildren, 8 great-grandchildren, and all of the extended Green family, so many of whom continue to serve our state and country so well. And Perry, from your friend, congratulations on being our Alaskan of the Week. I yield the floor.